I'm Rob.
And I'm Nate.
And welcome back to Rob and Nate Record a Podcast, and to an episode in which I will be victorious throughout the movie.
You will feel vindicated.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have finally done it. Something I've been trying to do for a number of years. I finally predicted a Nate Big Grin movie.
I'll put a little asterisk on that, saying that because I saw this theatrically and because I was wearing my mask, I couldn't express the full big grin, but there was definitely a smile on my face exiting this film.
Now, I've been trying to do this for a few years, more than a few years, trying to predict when a movie might be a big grin movie for Nate.
We should define what a big grin movie is.
I think we've discussed it before, but yes, you're right. We should define it.
This is something I came up with. This is a film where at the end of the film, I'm just so pleased with something, or particularly so surprised with something, and henceforth so pleased with it, that I have a big stupid grin on my face at the end of the film. I'm just like, yes, because I love to be surprised. I love when something's done just so well, it brings a smile to my face. And this is a film that accomplished that. Yeah. And it's hard to tell. And a big grin movie isn't always a good movie, as we discussed earlier. It can just be like, what the hell? It's like, that's so crazy that I'm happy that I'm watching it.
Yeah. And sometimes a big grin movie for Nate has objectively been a not great movie. Mm-hmm. But it has something that makes it redemptive, is totally unexpected, things like that. In the past, I think I've come quite close, but I either oversold it or built it up too much, things like that. I built this movie up to Nate. I told him that I thought he'd like it, but I also told him I only gave it a 10% chance of being a big grin movie.
And I'm gonna stop this right here for a moment to tell you, this movie is best seen with minimal information.
I completely agree.
So I would recommend...
So while I talked this up to Nate, I avoided giving him too much information
avoid
or spoilers.
Specifics. So watch the movie if at all possible, because we're going to take away some of the joy of this film because we're gonna spoil the heck out of it.
Yeah, we're a spoiler cast. So if you have any inclination to watch this movie, go watch it before you listen to this episode, because we're going to ruin it for you.
So, you watched this movie. You spoke up, but not too highly, this movie. This weekend, my schedule worked out that I had some time to see a movie, and I wanted to see a movie in the theater. And most of the films in this COVID time that we're recording, a lot of them you can rent if you want to through Amazon or other services. You can't do that for this film yet because it is part of that special deal between Warner Brothers and HBO Max, where you either see it theatrically or see it on HBO Max. I do not have HBO Max.
Yep. All Warner Brothers films for 2021 will be on HBO Max the same day that they enter theaters.
So I decided that because I didn't have another means of watching that this would be the movie that I would go see. But honestly, I think a bigger factor than that was when I learned that it was set in the 1990s.
Yeah.
Because for whatever reason, that was my 10 through 20 period, I've just felt like there's not enough 90s set things. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that was made in the 90s, obviously, but very few people go back yet and revisit the 90s, which they should do more of, because it's relatively easy to revisit, in terms of the cars and the set, but it's also quite a bit different. I mean, the pre-cell phone or pre-smartphone era.
Yeah.
And so I went in wanting to see a 90s nostalgia piece, period piece, and it is, but it wasn't intended to be so, because in looking into it, do you know when this screenplay was originally
written? In the 90s.
It was, first draft was finished in 1993.
Yeah.
And the screenwriter, John Lee Hannock, attempted for years and years and years to get this film made, ran through quite a few big-name directors that turned him down, including Steven Spielberg, who said the thing was too dark.
And it is dark.
And he eventually decided, I'm just going to make my movie because I love this story, I wrote it, and I want to make it. And as I'm sitting in the theater watching it, for so much of the film, I'm thinking, this is just so damn straightforward. And I didn't mean that as a knock on the movie. I was enjoying the fact that this was a straightforward crime thriller where you've got these two police officers trying to solve this series of murders and try to take down this guy. I thought it was very well done, but I felt it's a movie of the week. This could have aired on CBS in some Sunday night in 1993, and with the exception of the shots of nude bodies, pretty much as is.
Yeah.
But do you know what makes this movie? The little things. This movie is just...
It is.
You're
not wrong.
This is why it's a big Grin movie, is because it presented itself as being one thing, and I'm just like, I'm on board with this thing, and I'm enjoying it. But it was building towards a twist, multiple twists, really, at the end that just pushed it up and just added a layer of satisfaction to it and just made it kind of a special experience.
Yeah. Now, quick question for you before we continue to dive into this. What do you think was the weakest link of this movie?
Yeah, I hadn't really thought of that.
For me, it's an easy answer. Surprisingly, I think Rami Malik was the weakest link in this movie. His performance to me was a little bit off.
I liked him.
It was enjoyable, but of our three main actors, Jared Leto, Denzel Washington, Rami Malik, he's easily the weakest.
Well, it was nice for him to get to play. When you hear the cast of this film and you hear there's a serial killer, you're like, well, Rami Malek's the serial killer. No, he's one of the cops. So him and Denzel Washington. And I like that he was just playing against type.
Yeah.
And that worked. And I'm sure it was fun for him. And it's always nice to see Denzel Washington. I was thinking about Denzel Washington today, about how, every once in a while he'll do Offenses, or he'll do, what's it name, Isaiah Esquire?
Oh, Roman J.
Israel Esquire. He'll do something a little off the beaten path, and show what a great actor he is. But mostly he just kind of churns out about once a year these action, spectacle, thriller films that vary in quality. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not, but he's always good.
And a lot of, he's just a cop or, movies, and yeah. But you can expect a certain level of quality from any Denzel Washington film. Mm. Even if it's one of the lesser Denzel Washington films, they're still usually pretty good.
We should talk about the plot.
Yep. So we're introduced to Denzel Washington, who is Joe Deacon, who is working in
somewhere in northern
Kern County, California, which is a little bit further north. But he had previously worked for the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, not the LAPD, the Sheriff's Department. And there's this connection to a case that he worked while he was down at the Sheriff's Department, and it has a connection up in Kern County. And this is the opening of the film, and it's this is a MacGuffin. This is just kind of there. There's a case that they're working up there that involves getting some samples off of a pair of boots that's down in Los Angeles for testing, and they have to get it back in time for a court hearing.
And so he's dispatched by his boss, who's the one Secret Service agent from almost every season of 24. I forget his name, but it was fun to see him again.
Yeah. And
so they sent him down there, but that dissipates really quickly. And I remember you said that you thought that was...
I was going to get to it towards the end. It is a total oversight.
It's not really an oversight.
He's there to pick up evidence for a court hearing the next day, and he never makes it back for the court hearing.
No, but that's explained.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. So he has a phone conversation with his boss that says that they struck a plea deal, and you can come back up. And he decides that he's going to take some of his vacation days and stay down there, because when he arrived, he was able to see part of a press conference that Rami Malik was giving.
Yeah.
Because he's the lead investigator in this case of, at this point, it's 5 or 6 women who have been brutally murdered. And it is similar to a case that he was working in Los Angeles 5 years ago, just before he got divorced and had a heart attack and moved up north to take a less stressful position.
Yeah.
And this reignites this obsession that he has because he thinks these things are connected.
Yeah. But so he comes down, he sees the press conference. There's also some early interactions between him and Rami Malek's character, Jim Baxter. When he goes to leave the building, Rami Malek is standing by his car getting hooked up to a tow truck. He says, well, why don't you just come and tell me you need my vehicle moved? He says, I don't have time to come and find you. But he's standing there waiting for the tow truck. And eventually Rami Malek learns of Deacon's or Deke's reputation and invites him to come along to a crime scene. And, he's kind of trying to show off, kind of trying to show Deke up, and he says, a lot's changed since you've left the Sheriff's Department. And Denzel Washington's character says, well, you still got to catch him, right? Well, then not that much has changed. You know, and he just brings a different approach, a more reasoned, thought out approach, and very quickly is finding things that Rami Malek's character hasn't, you know, like the warehouse across the alley, you know, and things like that. But they start working together on this investigation, and fairly quickly they narrow down in on Albert Sparma, played by Jared Leto.
Who was the thing that stood out to you when you were talking?
He's creepy.
He is very creepy.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful Jared Leto part.
Yeah, this is, I mean, easily off the top of my head, I'd have to say this is the best part I've seen Jared Leto play. But I'm not a Jared Leto aficionado or anything like that. But yeah, he is just super creepy in this film. And one thing that's extra creepy about him, that I don't know if you noticed,
All right.
he never changes. He's wearing the same outfit the entire movie.
Oh, I noticed that.
Yeah. So they start working on this investigation into the Albert Sparma character. And, you know, Albert Sparma knows that he's being investigated, and he's just toying with the cops, including getting Deke, who has parked his vehicle that Albert has already seen him in, rented a car, and is following Albert. And Albert just takes him out, way out of town, and, you know, shows him that he knows that he's onto him by basically fooling him on a series of freeway interchanges.
Yeah.
You know, but it bears a connection to the case though as well, and that's something they use to hone in further on Albert. And yeah, one of the scenes that I loved in this movie that I didn't want to tell you too much about is when Deke breaks into his apartment that first time, and so Rami Malek's character, Detective Baxter, has called Albert and told him to meet him down the street at a bar because he wants to apologize, you know, for the interrogation. And while Albert is down the street at the bar, Deke breaks into his apartment looking for evidence so they could eventually get a search warrant. You know, just wants to know if he's the guy and if they're on the right path, and finds a cubby hole in the floor where there's all sorts of news clippings, you know, about crimes and murders and things like that. And there seems as though there might be a souvenir in there. But Albert figures out what's going on pretty quick, and he calls in a officer down shooting. And Deke has to try and get out of the apartment as police are swarming the area, and he has to climb up on the roof, climb down basically on a rain gutter off the side of the building. I thought that scene was just... And the whole time, Albert Sparma is standing out on the street, sipping a soda.
He's sipping a Shirley Temple.
Yeah.
That he ordered to go from the bar.
Yeah.
When he figured out that he was being stood up.
And he's just standing on the street watching the spectacle unfold, you know, and looks at Rami Malek and gives him a look and watches Rami Malek take off to go pick up Deke. And yeah.
It's a great cat and mouse movie.
Oh, yeah. And eventually, you know, they continue to interrogate Albert and hone in on him. And at one point, basically, when Deke goes to get coffee, Albert gets in contact with Rami Malek.
During a nighttime stakeout.
Yeah.
They've got a limit of... They're getting where they're getting pressure, and they're going to bring in the feds unless they can kind of break this over the weekend. And so Denzel Washington and Rami Malek are doing this stakeout, and Malik's getting some pushback from his superiors about, it's like, yeah, I need to watch out this guy a little bit. Denzel Washington's a little... You don't want to get too close to this guy. But they just kind of take to each other. I mean, they kind of circle around each other as rivals at first, but they get to be really taken with each other.
Yeah.
And you were saying about what happens at the stakeout.
Well, so Deke goes to get coffee, and Albert Sparma comes out and talks to Detective Baxter and basically offers to take him to the bodies. And, you know, so they get in the car and they take off and they leave Deke.
Malik tries to wait, but he eventually can't give up. It's just so involved.
But Albert knows. Like, Albert is so ahead of them. He knows and has timed everything so that he can, you know, Detective Baxter's going to have to make his decisions and commit one way or the other before Deke can get back. And they go out into the desert, and it's this, as you mentioned, a great cat and mouse in this back and forth where Albert Sparma tells Detective Baxter where to dig, and there's no bodies. And he just keeps digging, you know, holes, and the whole time Deke is looking for him.
Yeah. And Sparma's sitting there, and you're just waiting because it looks like he's making Baxter do the digging for him.
Yeah.
That it seems to be that he's trying to tire Baxter out so he can take his gun and shoot him and put him in one of these holes.
Yeah. And eventually, Jared Leto's character snaps and clubs Albert Sparma with the
No, that Malik's character snaps.
Because
Jared Leto is starting to torment him, starting to tease him and say, you got a really nice family, because we meet his family earlier on. He's got a wife and 2 kids. And is like, oh, if you can't solve this case, how can you protect them? And he breaks. The detective breaks, takes the shovel in his hand, smashes him in the back of the head, immediately regrets what he did, tries to get a response out of the man, and he's done.
And of course, that's right when Deke shows up.
Deke finally is able to track him down. He was kind of slightly behind, but got lost out in the desert and had to hit a dead end, and then tracked back looking for gates. And he found this one gate had the lock
unlocked,
noticeably unlocked. So he shows up at the scene.
We should backtrack a little bit before that, though, because is Marcia the medical examiner?
Yeah.
Played by Judith Scott. Deke has gone to the medical examiner's office several times and had a couple conversations with Marcia. And it's obvious that there's something more there between Marcia and Deke. And it's about this point in the movie that we start to learn a little bit more about Deke's history. And that he was investigating this case. They had some dead bodies. And Deke inadvertently shoots someone and kills a young lady. And the medical examiner, Marcia, played by Judith Scott, takes the body out of the corpse and says, I'm classifying this death as a homicide by stabbing.
Yeah.
And basically covers up Deke's mistake.
Along with Deke's partner at the time, who later becomes
Baxter's
boss.
Oh, his boss, that's right. But that was the thing that pushed Deke over the edge. And
caused the heart attack, caused the divorce, and caused him to relocate.
And so Deke sees this in Baxter, but also knows that Baxter has a certain level of talent, and that if they're ever going to have any hope of continuing to stop murders like this, Baxter's their best bet. And so he tells Baxter to bury Albert Sparma in one of the holes and to fill the holes in, and that he'll be back. And he goes back to Albert Sparma's apartment,
empties
it of everything, just takes garbage bags and packs up everything.
Leaves his car out in an area where it's going to be stripped, and that's actually...
He actually tosses the keys to the street with them. And
so this ties into something earlier, because there was another car that Sparma had that was stolen, but he didn't immediately report it as stolen. There was some kind of gray area about that. So this is a guy that's kind of a drifter, and he'll kind of just pack up and leave. He'd done that before.
Yeah.
And so they're able to create the impression that he did this because he had lived in Los Angeles, moved to Detroit, came back to Los Angeles, and he doesn't have any real connections to anybody. So they make it look like he just disappeared.
Yeah.
And he's not a guy people are going to be looking for.
And so Detective Baxter, after burying the body, goes home, takes some time off, takes some vacation time.
He's a moral man.
And he's at home with his family, and he's sitting by the pool with his kids, and playing in the pool.
He's distraught.
And he is just very deeply distraught, can't pay attention to his kids. His wife knows something's wrong. Yeah, and at the same time, we see Deke driving home on the freeway. And then the captain comes by the house and gives the wife an envelope to give to Baxter.
Deke said to give this to your husband.
Yeah, we should at this point note that Baxter kept asking Deke that when he found the hole with the news clippings, if he found a beret, but that was
Red
right.
Beret.
Beret, but that was exactly when Jared Leto, Albert Sparma, had called in the officer down, and before he's had a chance to actually go through this stash of newspaper clippings and possible souvenirs, before he's had a chance to go through it, that's when he's got to flee the apartment.
And this Red Beret
Yeah.
was something that was being worn by a girl that
One of the
disappeared.
victims. Yeah.
That they think may have been
Well, they think it was a victim, but they have never found
the body.
Yeah. And so Detective Baxter is sitting in the yard by the pool, sitting there, and his wife brings him this envelope, tells him that the captain dropped it off, and walks away.
There's 2 things in the envelope.
And Detective Baxter pulls it out. And what was the first one, remind me?
There's a little piece of paper that says "No Angels."
Yeah. And then he tips the envelope, and out slides a red beret. And
thus allowing the detective to realize I was right.
Yes.
So I don't have to beat myself up too much about this because he did it.
Now, let me just stop right here. If this had been the ending of the film, what would you have thought of this film?
I would have been pleased. I would have been satisfied.
You know, to some extent, you would have been.
But I wouldn't have been as satisfied.
But then Deke, finishes the ride home. He's up to his yard. He throws a little fuel in a burn barrel.
To burn all these possessions.
And takes all of the garbage bags of Albert Sparma's belongings and just starts dumping them into the burn barrel, burning all of his belongings. And after he has emptied the back of his truck and even dumped in the fuel canister into the fire, he walks to the front of the truck, and what does he pull out?
A little shopping bag.
It's a little shopping bag, and inside it is the cardboard thing with spots for 3 barrettes. Yeah. There's 2 still in it. 1 is missing, and he takes the other 2 barrettes with the packaging, throws it in the fire, and burns it. There was no red barrette in Albert Sparma's apartment. Yeah. Deke just did that to save Baxter.
His sanity. Yeah.
To prevent Baxter from doing exactly what he's already done. Tosses it in the fire, burns it up because he knows what? It's the little things that get you caught.
Yeah.
And it just, that twist.
Slam.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh my God.
I mean, it's dark. Mm-hmm. Because basically then they're telling us Baxter just killed this man in cold blood, who basically Albert Sparma, we can't ever prove that he's a killer. Yeah. He's just crime obsessed.
Yeah. Because they mentioned that earlier, that he had been arrested or turned himself in.
Yeah.
Like 8 years.
And confessed to a crime.
Yeah, 8 years
that
previous.
That they then proved that he couldn't have committed.
Yeah. So is this guy really a creep of the type that kills women, or is he a creep of the type that likes to fantasize that he does it and likes to study it? Which leads to the question, do you think he really did it?
My viewing of this, he didn't do it.
My viewing is that he did.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of this. It leaves it ambiguous enough. And in this climate and in this day and age, that makes this movie problematic. But it was very well executed. It was, it worked for me.
But it was not particularly well received.
No, absolutely not. And this was, so I had not read any other reviews of this until after Nate texted me and told me that he was in the theater. And around the same time that Nate had texted me and said he was in the theater, my favorite podcast said that they were going to be reviewing this, and I got all excited. And I started looking around on Twitter, and I quickly realized my favorite podcast, which is a true crime review podcast, and they review a lot of pop culture and things, true crime pop culture, that they basically put out on Twitter, that like one of the hosts put out on Twitter that she hated this movie. And I started to get nervous, so I started looking at other reviews, and I went, oh no, Nate's not going to like this. And I can tell you one specific reason why I thought you weren't going to like this.
All right.
Very consistently, movies that I have liked, Nate has not liked because they had shadows of better movies. Or reminded him of what he viewed as better movies. Even if I thought that the movie was a better execution than the previous version, if it reminds him of a previous movie, Nate tends to not like these. And a lot of people are comparing this to Seven.
I didn't get the Seven thing.
I saw a number of things of Seven. Some people are taking it a little bit too far. In fact, I saw one person online was commenting about this and was texting someone while they were watching it from home and said, not Morgan Freeman just did such and such, Yeah. And not Brad Pitt did this and this and this. But so that's why I was like, oh crap, Nate's going to hate this. And so several hours passed by, and I waited a while because I didn't want to interrupt the movie for him. But it got to be like 4 hours after he texted me and said he was going into the movie. I was so concerned about this, I even pulled up the picture you sent me to look at the start time of the movie to see if you were out of the movie and if it was safe to text you. So it had been like 4 hours, and I texted Nate and be like, well, what'd you think? Expecting Nate to be like, this sucked, And it was, I'll let them tell you what you thought.
This was, getting back to what I said before, is I was enjoying this as a TV movie, as a movie of the week murder mystery, and I love those things. They're not very good, but they're like a junk food.
Yeah.
And so this was like a high-end version of that. It's like a Pepsi and Pepsi 1893.
Yeah.
Made a reference to Pepsi 1893 on the
Good job.
podcast. It's just a high-end version of that. And I was really enjoying it as that. And then I got the bonus of the neat twist that I didn't see coming.
Yeah. Now, to be clear, I don't think either one of us is going to rate this especially high. This is not like a great movie. This is very dark.
And what it is it is very satisfying for the kind of movie that it is.
I completely agree.
It's not so much breaking new ground as just doing what it's doing very well.
Yep. Which leads me to my next question. How would you rate this film?
I agree with you that I just would not feel comfortable really giving it more than 3 stars on a 4-star scale. But I also kind of think it's an 8 out of 10.
See, I'm with you. I'm giving it 3 and 7 though. Mm. You know, it's dark enough and things like that. I have trouble giving it much higher than 7, maybe 7.5. You know, you could probably convince me that this is an 8-star movie, but the subject matter and a few things about this film, the problematic nature of some of the police portrayals in this film in this day and age, you know, I just gave it a 7. So, but yeah, it was very well executed. It's not being.
Hey, and so was Jared Leto.
Wow. Well, I wouldn't call that a very well executed thing.
That was. You're right. I agree.
Looking at IMDb, this currently has an aggregate score of 6.3 stars. So people aren't liking this as much as we did. Mm. A lot of reviews of this are not great. Few people here locally, reviewers, like it. The KSL movie show liked it. Mm. You know, things like that. So, yeah.
For me, and I know you saw it on HBO Max at home, but for me, it's just the kind of movie you want to go out and see on a Saturday afternoon in the theater.
Yeah. Well, we're in slightly different situations. I have 2 puppies at home. So for us, the HBO Max things made sense because now we can sit on our sofa with our puppies at home, potty training a puppy, and still be able to watch all the new releases. So
you could sneak those puppies in popcorn bucket.
Well, Scout I couldn't, but Brinkley I certainly could. Though she's quickly outgrown the popcorn bucket. Oh, okay. You haven't seen her for a little while.
2 or 3 weeks?
Yeah. She's much, much bigger.
Oh, okay.
So, anyways. Anything else to add on this movie?
No.
Should we look at box office
for everybody.
Information real quick? Not that we expect big box office numbers yet.
Yeah, the box office is like, from 2020 on, it's going to be like less a good indication of the quality and the performance of the movie because box office just has been knocked over.
Well, to a certain extent, I view whether or not it made its money back as kind of a threshold or a benchmark, and whether it's making money.
It's harder to tell that now.
Well, this movie had an estimated budget. Oh no, it's not giving me the budget. It had an opening weekend of $4.7 million, and its worldwide gross thus far is $13.1 million. So, I suspect it probably will make its money back.
It's a movie that had that information been provided, I could totally see it being higher than it seems like it should be. Because this feels like it would not have cost all that much to make.
No.
But you've got Denzel Washington.
Well, and there's some shooting errors that tell me this didn't have the budget for that type of thing. Mm. Specifically, there are the scenes when he's driving down the freeway when the car's still in park. That's one of my least favorite errors for a movie to make. That just drives me nuts. Other things, when he goes to the corner market to get the coffee, Denzel Washington, the video game that the kids are playing when he comes in. So this is set in the fall of 1990 specifically.
Specifically October of 1990.
Yeah. The video game that the kids are playing.
Is it the turkey hunting game?
No.
Okay.
They're playing, I think it's Street Fighter 2. Didn't come out till 1992.
Okay.
The van that's being driven with Jared Leto as the prisoner being followed by the police cars. That van was not released until 1993. Mm. You know, just little mistakes like that.
The little things.
Yeah, it's the little things, you know. But yeah, I still enjoyed this movie for the type of film it is, and it is dark, just very well executed. So I don't really have much else to say about this. So I'm Rob.
I'm Nate.
And this is Rob and Nate Record a Podcast. Were you surprised you liked this?
Kind of.
So I didn't give too many spoilers though,
no,
right?
You didn't. And yeah. I think you probably
I was going out of my way not to give spoilers.
I don't think I retained most of the information you gave me on it even
Well, then. I didn't give you any specifics other than Jared Leto's creepy. Mm-hmm. You know. I so wanted to tell you about the scene with Denzel Washington climbing over the roof. Mm-hmm. But I was like, no, I can't. If he's going to go see it, I can't tell him. But I didn't know you were going to go see it.
The thing, and you know, that was fairly spur of the moment.
Yeah.
That I decided to see it. But one of the things that I'm fond of this movie and that I really enjoyed about enjoying it is that I enjoyed it as two different types of movies. I enjoyed it as a super basic movie of the week mystery that's very straightforward with that unexpected bonus twist at the end.
Yeah.
That was just the cherry on top.
Yeah.
But if this movie had ended with us thinking that, oh, he was right all along, I would have been fine with it. But the bonus, I'm glad I got.
Yeah. Yeah, it was... Yeah, what else can I say? It totally caught me. I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, when he pulls out that thing with the barrettes, I'm like, no. Yeah, I mean, that got me. Like, that got me. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. That got me hook, line, and sinker. You know, I thought it was, like, one thing. It was bad enough when he burns the evidence. Like, when he takes the newspaper clippings and throws them in the fire, I'm like, huh, something's off about this. Something's not right about that. And then he pulls out the bag and the barrettes, and I'm like, because, I mean, otherwise, like, but I mean, at the same time, he still had to destroy the evidence. Even if he was the guy and had the clippings and everything, he still had to destroy him because they killed him.
Yeah.
So, yeah.